crafting a short, like a 5-minute or less film to be utilized specifically in this context, specifically for this audience, nobody seemed to really truly do.
iTeammate is looking at a new wave of therapy coming to Indiana to help human trafficking survivors open the door to healing. It's done by watching short films.
Yeah, they help survivors better recognize their experiences and then receive more in-depth counseling. iTeammate's Jasmine Miner digging into that for us tonight. Jasmine, what'd you find?
Well, guys, I'm learning that one of the most difficult things for a trafficking survivor can be to identify what happened or what is happening to them because the situation is so normalized for them, right? And so that can usually be even more difficult the younger you are, or even if your trafficker is someone that's a loved one, someone that's close to you. And that's exactly why Point of View Story, based right here in Indy, has given 20+ agencies across the state access to these therapy films in the hope that a survivor's norm isn't trauma, but instead freedom.
Now, can we talk about your situation? Do you see anything similar? And then that's where the moment happens, the magic of, oh yeah, that did happen to me. Yeah, we call that trafficking.
6 films.
Films are helping them to see is we're able to show what coercion looks like, the subtleties of it, the nuances of it. We're able to show what it looks like when somebody's attacking your identity.
All made not for the public.
You're hustling for that restaurant. You're not doing anything but making them rich. You need to work for you.
But for those who need it most.
Then we just cut to black. And then what that does is allows then a conversation to take place.
Mark Steenbarger started Point of View Story. His films are open-ended and focus on things like trust, coercion, and identity. They're meant to help trafficking survivors better recognize what happened to them and reduce their risk of re-exploitation.
And so when we say, are you being trafficked? They don't see themselves as trafficked.
You weren't able to identify as someone who was trafficked until you were 36.
Correct.
Wow.
Eric Harris, a human trafficking field consultant, says most survivors in Indiana are trafficked by loved ones, which means the experience in some ways is all they know. He says it makes it harder to distinguish wrong from right.
My mom at age 10 started grooming me for human trafficking. That's when I was being sexually exploited daily by multiple people every day for a period of about almost 8 months. Let's imagine you just walked away from a very violent, very on your toes, live or die mode, and you're exiting and you would think, you know, as a service provider, oh, that's gotta be a huge relief. No, it doesn't matter. It takes years.
And I would say that most of them do not recognize that they are experiencing trafficking. Probably like 75 to 80% when they're in it. And even in the beginnings of it, I would say probably 100%.
It's the key to set them free, right?
Yeah.
Whitney Cloyne is a trauma therapist for Saxifrage Counseling and Advocacy. She says Mark's films can help survivors like Eric combat what's called complex trauma.
In the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is what mental health professionals use to diagnose our clients, complex trauma is not in there.
It means she can't always diagnose her clients properly, and that gets in the way of getting them the specific treatment they need.
It does create problems because a lot of times what my clients are experiencing is not post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, that's the complex part, is that it's like multiple things that have happened to them throughout their life.
If you were able to identify what had happened to you or what was going on earlier, how do you think that would have changed the rest of your life?
I think ultimately if I would have had the moment to be pulled to the side and actually been spoken to as a young teenager and be respected and validated for what I said, I probably would have never experienced a quarter of the things I did.
From the color,
it shows a lot of reds because that red is power, and that's kind of what she's coming at her with.
to the language used. The films are an intervention tool meant to bridge that connection.
And it wasn't until I connected with other survivors after I told them the story, he said, man, your mom tricked you out. I mean, that opened the door to start the healing.
So a survivor can one day find freedom.
It's the most purpose-filling, giving work I've ever done.
I am free. I am free to be me.
Well, something that Whitney, the trauma therapist there, told me, she would often use documentaries as a visual way to open up the conversation with her clients. The problem is most documentaries are meant to raise awareness for people like you and me, or outside viewers, I should say, and they also take up a lot of time. So she typically said that a session will only be 45 to 60 minutes, and sometimes she'll only see a survivor once. And that's exactly why, guys, Point of View Story makes their films very short, only 3 to 8 minutes long, so that majority of that session can be spent on the conversation.
Fascinating. Good work by them.
The epitome of you don't know what you don't know.
You really don't. And it's a good thing to raise awareness, but I think it's so important to make sure that these survivors get the help that they need and that they deserve, to be honest with you.
Because it's happening every day.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Well, if you are a person who identifies with any of these experiences, we urge you to call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. Or if you are a service provider and you would like to use Point of View Stories therapy films in your practice, just head to wishtv.com and click on the As Seen on Wish section.